You can close your eyes or set your gaze at one spot. Taking a moment to soften the expression on your face, soften the shoulders down away from the ears. Push your sit bones down to sit up a little taller. And let's begin to deepen the breath. So send some nice slow inhales down. So if you could breathe all the way down into your pelvis. And then let your exhales slide up and out. As if they could slide right out through the crown of your head. Maybe bring some Ujjayi breath into practice this evening, closing off the back of your throat. Which will help kind of smooth things out and slow the breath down. And if you're feeling a little jazzed up or stressed out, maybe those exhales are slower than the inhales. Beginning to pull your attention into your internal experience, noticing how you feel under your skin, the space that you take up, and how much energy you're bringing into practice this evening. And if there's an intention or a dedication that you'd like to set, you could bring that to mind now. Maybe bring your hands over your heart or palms together in a prayer. And then you can let your eyes open. And we'll transition into child's pose. So you can elevate the floor under your forehead if you need to with a blanket or a block. Walk the arms as far forward as they can go. Spread the fingers wide. Feel the sit bones reach down and back. Tailbone nice and heavy. And then just start to rock the hips side to side, nice and slowly. Observing how your thigh bones rotate inside the hip joints. How as you move your hips away from one leg, that leg has to internally rotate a bit as the opposite leg externally rotates a bit. And then things change as we move in the other direction. And there might be more ease moving into one side than the other. And you might notice where that resistance is coming from. Is it the external rotation on one side that feels a little tough or a little restricted? Is it the internal rotation? And then return to center. Draw the hands maybe a little bit further forward. Nice long breath in. And then exhale, come on up to your tabletop. We'll just take a couple rounds of cat-cow here. Walk your knees a little bit wider apart, bringing your toes in. So your thighs come into a little bit of external rotation, just a bit, and then a couple cat-cows like that. And we'll bring the knees a little closer together. Take the feet out wider so your thighs internally rotate and see what that feels like through your cat-cows. Obviously, we're not going to have the same range of motion depending on where the thighs are. And then back to center, back to your child's pose. Fingers crawling forward, breathe in. Breathe out, come into a long cat pose. Feeling your hips shift forward and down. Pelvis tips forward. With that back bend, peel up your spine. Inhale, cobra. Elbows can be as bent as they need to be here. And then exhale, lower all the way down. Bring your forehead to the mat. Bring your arms down by your sides. Bring the inner thighs a little closer together. And then inhale, lift everything up. Locust pose. Feeling for a bit of an internal rotation in your thighs. Exhale, the hands under the shoulders, tip it back. And when the feet land, inhale, cobra, pull the heart forward through the upper arms. And exhale, child's pose. We'll do that again. Inhale. Exhale, long cat. Hips forward and down, flowing right into it. Inhale, cobra. Exhale, lower down. Bring your forehead to the mat, bring your arms by your sides. Inhale, lift everything up. Locust. Inner thighs spinning towards the ceiling a bit. Exhale, the hands come under the shoulders and you tip it back until the feet land. Inhale, pull the rib cage forward and up. And then exhale, child's pose. Breathe in. Breathe out, long cat. Pelvis forward and down. Inhale, cobra. Exhale, release. Inhale, locust. Exhale, the hands come down, tip it back. Inhale, cobra. Maybe straighten the arms a little bit more this third try. And then exhale, child's pose. Go ahead and take your block and we'll roll over onto backs. Constructive rest with the block in between the thighs, walking the feet in a little closer to the hips. Arms will just rest down by your sides. Take a breath in. Exhale, slide your tailbone forward, knees reach forward. Slowly lift the spine up one bone at a time into your bridge. Take a breath in here as you press down through the shoulders and open up the chest. And then exhale, knees forward, lower the spine from the top to the bottom. Breathe in. Breathe out, knees forward, lift up. Breathe in, open up the heart. Press down through the feet, lift the hips, squeeze the block. And then exhale, knees forward and slowly lower down. Breathe in. One more, breathe out, knees forward, hips lift. Press through the shoulders, lift everything up, even a little gentle press down through the back of the head. Holding on to that block. Exhale, lower down. Inhale. We'll exhale, bring the knees in towards the chest, block still in between the thighs. Arms can come out to a T, and then we'll bring the knees just over to the right. The knees can stay stacked. You can play around with letting them splay apart a bit. Follow your next exhale to the bottom. And then inhale, bring the knees back up through center. And exhale, take them over to the left. Not a lot of effort in here to crank into the twist. Just let your breath do the work. Opening up the rib cage, feeling those bottom side ribs flare out. And then at the bottom of your next exhale, inhale and bring the knees back up through center. We're going to keep that block and just roll over onto your belly, block still in between the thighs. Might not be the most graceful, that's fine. Arms down by your sides, forehead to the mat. This time, if you'd like, you can interlace the hands, holding onto that block with the inner thighs, roll the chest open, lift everything up. And think about rotating your thighs in a way that could slide the block towards the ceiling. If your hands are interlaced, reach your knuckles back as you take your heart forward and up. One more breath here. And then exhale, release. Keep that block in between the thighs. Tuck the toes. Press through tabletop. And we'll come into a standing forward fold. So you have the block, the skinniest width in between your thighs. As much of a bend in the knees as you need here. Feet actively pushing the floor away, spread nice and wide for all your toes. You can have your hands on blocks, the floor, tented fingers. You can hold opposite elbows. Take another 5 breaths here. And Deb, if this is too much pressure on your tooth, you can just come up into the half lift. Still opening up through the backs of the legs. Hold on to that block with your inner thighs. And imagine that as you push your feet down to the floor, even if your knees are quite bent, that you could slide the block up, that you can almost suck it up through your inner thighs towards the ceiling. Take another breath in. On your exhale, lower the hips down and back. Thighs come parallel to the floor. You're holding onto that block. Push the fingertips down. Inhale, lift the chest up. Exhale, reach the arms forward. As if you could slide the block and the arms further apart. And then inhale, chair pose. Tailbone nice and heavy. Exhale, stand up, reach the arms up and swing them down by your sides. Inhale, arms come back up. Exhale, chair. Inhale, low chair. Thighs parallel to the floor, arms reaching forward. Exhale, hands come down. Hips stay low. Push the floor to lift the chest, find a little back bend in that upper back. And then exhale, fold forward. Breathe in. Breathe out. Inhale. Exhale, lower the hips. Push the floor, inhale, lift the chest. Exhale, reach the arms forward, feeling like the hips are still sliding back. Inhale, chair pose. Exhale, push through the feet, arms come up, and like you're swimming down by your sides. And one more, inhale, arms up. Exhale, chair. Inhale, low chair. Exhale, hands down. Push the floor, inhale, lift the chest. Exhale, fold. Now see if you can keep a hold of that block with your inner thighs and walk your hands forward into downward facing dog. Just like in our standing forward fold in Uttanasana, your feet are pushing the floor away and your thighs are trying to lift that block up and back. If you can relax your belly. Hands push the floor away and feel that push extend up through the arms, through the sides of the waist. And then release the knees down. You can take the block out and sit back on your heels, or you can just sit right back onto that block. Bring the first two fingers right up in between the eyebrows. We're going to block off the left nostril with your pinky finger. Couple breaths on that right side. And then we're going to play around with the 4-count breath, where we inhale for a count of 4. We're going to hold the inhale for 4, exhale for 4, hold the exhale for 4. Alternate nostril breathing. If at any point the holding feels like it's not working for you, it's making you feel more stressed out, take it to a pace that still feels challenging, but that you can actually work with. So you don't want to, we're not trying to ramp things up with this, more even things out. So exhaling on that right side, inhale for 2, 3, 4, and hold for 2, 3, 4. Exhale left for 2, 3, 4, and hold for 2, 3, 4. Inhale left for 2, 3, 4, and hold for 2, 3, 4. Exhale right for 2, 3, 4, and hold for 2, 3, 4. Do a couple more rounds on your own. And again, you're working to have the inhale, the hold, the exhale, the hold about the same length. I'm recovering from a little cold, so I was finding it really helpful on the inhale to use the nostril that was, or the finger that was blocking the nostril, to almost like lift and open up that nostril a little bit. So you can almost use like the inner edge of the fingernail right above the soft part of the nose to kind of lift and open. So if you notice that one side feels more challenging than the other, maybe that's something to play with. I'm not sure if I explained that well. You just kind of slide that skin up the side of the nose. And the next time you exhale right, that will be your last round. And you can make your way up into tabletop from there. So there's absolutely no rush. If you had just started, finish your rounds and we'll all meet in tabletop eventually. All right. From tabletop, you can just take a couple circles with the hips. And then remember what it felt like to have the block in between your thighs. So give a little squeeze onto an imaginary block. See if you can keep your hips, your pelvis pretty level. Keep that right hip where it is, but just start to take some circles with your left thigh. Bring that knee nice and close to the chest, and then taking as wide of a circle as you can. All the while, that right thigh trying to still squeeze onto the imaginary block to help keep your right hip over your right knee. Can you maintain a nice, steady, even breath as you move? And can you use less of your face to try to keep your hips level? Change direction. And then release. Pull that imaginary block. This time it's the left side that's going to really hold on to that block as you start to circle the right knee. How big can you make that circle as you keep that stability through your left hip? Change direction. and then release. Press back to child's pose. And just take a couple slides from side to side with your hips. Notice how things feel compared to when we started. Inhale into tabletop and exhale, downward facing dog. Taking that imaginary block up and back. Feeling like the groins could shift that block back and up. And then we'll inhale the left leg back and up. You can bend the knee, open up to hip. The leg could be straight here. And then we'll step the foot up in between the hands, however you get it up there. And you might want some, excuse me, cushion under your back knee. And I actually like to set it up so that it's not even just under the knee, that my foot's on it as well, so that my lower leg stays kind of level. So just starting out 90 degrees in your knees and your hip. And we'll just find a couple of cat cows here. So your pubic bone and your sit bones are both part of your pelvis. So they're going to move. So your pelvis tips forward, pubic bones drops down and slides underneath you a little bit. And then the pelvis tips back and the sit bones are going to tuck underneath you. Next time your sit bones tuck underneath you, go ahead and keep that. And then we'll bend the front knee just as far as it wants to go, while still maintaining that little back tilt of the pelvis. You take the arms up. Good. And feel the arms can help lift up the rib cage the more you slide those shoulder blades up. Feel how lifting the rib cage up off the hips lengthens your spine. Feeling all those connections down through the inside edge of that right leg. And then we'll let the arms take a break. We'll come out. Just unbend your front knee, yeah. And then we're going to turn the right foot to the left. So the shin's going to turn in a little bit. So your left thigh bone is going to externally rotate. This is something one of the yoga teacher friends, Erin Ellers, that some of you guys might know Erin, had posted about this a couple weeks ago, and it's been inspiring me ever since. So you're turning your foot in, the femur is going to rotate out a little bit, and then see if you can find, again, that little bit of a tuck to the pelvis. So sit bones down and forward, pubic bones up. And you maintain that. Hips still facing forward as best you can, and then come into that lunge any amount. And you might not have to go very far at all for this to feel interesting. If you're like, I don't feel anything, and you've come pretty deep into the lunge, come back out again, play around, really tuck that pelvis under, and then just ease in. You really don't need to go far, at least in my body. I don't have to go very far to feel a whole lot going on here. Arms up. We'll bring the arms down. Give that front leg a break. Toes turn back. And this time, as you might have guessed, the right foot's going to turn out to the right. You have little internal rotation on that right thigh bone. So your right foot is further to the right than your right knee. You can play around with a couple of forward and back tilts of the pelvis, eventually landing in the back tilt. And then again, any amount coming forward into the lunge. Sending your breath wherever it's needed. Maybe arms up. And really push them up if they're up, those upper side ribs lifting to help support the arms from underneath. And the arms come down. Let's take a little break. Come back to your child's pose. Glide the hips side to side. And maybe some of the resistance that you noticed in the beginning of practice has subsided. Inhale, tabletop, and exhale, downward facing dog. Take that right leg back and up, bend the knee, open the hip. Just an exploration. And then stepping that foot forward. Pad up the back knee if you'd like. And same thing. Tipping the pelvis forward, tipping the pelvis back. Moving to the rhythm of your steady breath. And the next time the pelvis tips back, keep it there. Squeeze that left butt cheek a little bit. And then we'll bend through the right knee. Arms up. So when we're working to maintain this little back tilt of the pelvis, it might mean that you don't go as far as you usually go in your lunge. Nothing wrong with going into a deep lunge and not maintaining that back tilt of the pelvis. We're just using it as something to play with today. So this isn't the way you always need to do it. There's no hard and fast rules here. But how does it feel to move with your pelvis tipped back? Arms up, sides of the ribs up, shoulder blades up. And the more you think about lifting your arms from the rib cage, from the shoulder blades, the less work it's going to feel like in those upper shoulders, around your neck. And then let's give the arms a break and come back to your 90 degrees. We're going to turn the left heel out, the left shin out. Wait, no, we'll turn it in. We'll turn it in first. Doesn't actually matter, but you can do a couple of pelvic tilts here. And then you're going to hold that backward tilt to the pelvis, posterior tilt, and then we'll bend that front knee any amount. Maybe arms up. And then we'll ease back out of that. And we'll turn the shin out. So yeah, that little internal rotation of your left thigh bone. Couple tilts of your pelvis. And then we'll tip it back. Keep that back tilt. It's very hard for me to stay balanced like this. I don't know if you guys are feeling the same. And then we'll bend that front knee. Gaze nice and steady at one spot. That will help with balance. You can also always take your right foot out a little wider on your mat. Arms up. So you can feel when you take your arms up that you're picking up the connection from the rib cage through your spine all the way down into your inner left thigh. Maybe. There might be some other sensations that are so intense that you haven't gotten down to the level of feeling all those connections yet, and that's fine. How does it feel for your body to be in this shape? And then arms down. Take a little break, come into child's pose. Normally, if child's pose is not a break for you and you normally would skip it, just keep your head more elevated and play around with the gliding of the hips and see how it feels. You can even do that from kind of like a crouched tabletop position. All right. And then we'll come to stand on our knees. And you might like some padding. And hold your hips. And feel for standing nice and tall on your knees. Your knees push into the floor, the crown of the head reaches up. And we'll step the left foot back into that 90 degree. Playing around a little bit with balance. So maybe no hands, you step the foot. Now set your gaze at one spot. That's not going to move. Take your arms out wide like a T. And then heel toe your left foot over until it's directly in front of your right knee. And then figure out how you can do that. So your inner thighs pull in, gaze nice and steady, draw your low belly in and up. All these things can be helpful. You could imagine that your inner thighs could hold a block even though they're not in a position where they could hold it together. All right, and then can you start to turn your chest to the right? And just notice the miracle that is your front foot, maintaining all that balance for you as you turn back to center. And turn to your left. Back to center. Maybe arms up overhead. And then we bring the hands down. Let's take pigeon prep on the side, walking your left foot over. So half pigeon, or you can take it on your back in a figure four, left ankle over right knee. Stay upright, or you can come into the forward folded version of the pose. Let everything settle. All right, and then press back into downward facing dog. And release to kneeling. Standing up on your knees. And then we'll step the left foot forward. Is that the opposite, hopefully? Bring your other foot forward regardless. And then you're going to heel toe the foot over in front of your left knee. Your arms can be out. So this will be helpful. It's like a, like a tightrope walker. You can also, if the foot being directly in front of the knee is just too much, just bring it close. Bring it closer and just play around with the balance. Running a steady gaze. Heavy through the tailbone. Lower belly drawing in and up. And then you can open up to the left. Nice solid connection of your back foot, your back knee to the floor. Coming back through center. And then we'll turn to the right. Notice what you're doing with your face. Come back to center. Maybe take the arms up overhead. And then we'll come down into pigeon prep on this side. Can you feel the vibrations of your Ujjayi breath at the back of your throat? And then step back into downward facing dog. Step your left foot forward. Get up into warrior one. And we'll just straighten the left leg. Widen your, or lengthen out your stance a bit if you need to. We're going to set up for triangle pose. So holding your right hip, with the left arm up. Hips come or tip forward down. Hand can come down onto your foot block or the inside edge of the foot. And then we'll take the right arm up. Pushing off your bottom arm to rotate your rib cage into the twist. And then you can bring in that little bit of external rotation in both legs. Well, there's quite a bit actually in your front leg, but a little bit of external rotation in that right leg to open up the hips a bit. We're gonna bend the right knee and walk that back foot in a bit and take it up into half moon pose. So the right leg will come up, gaze at one spot. And as soon as that right leg comes up, wake it up. So it's the toes are spread, foot is reaching back and up. Both thighs externally rotating here. And then a little bend in your front knee. Step that right foot all the way back. You're gonna walk the hands around to the right side of the mat. Straighten both legs. And then start to glide the hips side to side. Feeling one leg internally rotate, one leg externally rotate. So similar to what we did in child's pose, but now you can kind of play around with bending one knee more. You can keep the feet planted, or you can play around with lifting the foot. So just explore the rotation of your hips in any way that feels interesting to you. And then come to center. Press strongly through both legs, both feet. We'll keep the right hand right under the nose, and we'll take the left arm up for a twist. Watch that you didn't lose the push through both legs. Sometimes that right leg can get a little lazy. And then bring your left hand right to your back bottom rib cage. And can you start to back bend from that spot? If you could curl back over your arm. And let that deepen the twist. So you're going to deepen the twist by way of the back bend. Pubic bone and tailbone are going to reach back a bit. Both legs nice and strong. Maybe that left arm comes back up. And then bring the left hand down. Action through both legs, hold the hips. And then with an inhale, come on up to stand. You can jump the feet together, just shake it out for a minute. All right, and we'll do the other side. So we're just gonna step out this time, step out to the right, setting up for triangle pose. And even here, before we start to come into the pose, you can feel how when you turn your hips forward, you feel the rotation through the back thigh and the front thigh. Just playing around with the ease of movement in those joints. And then we'll keep the hips turned forward, inhale. Exhale, bring it down. Sending your hand wherever it needs to be to help you with the twist. So if the floor feels too far away, use a block. You're gonna push off the floor to rotate that rib cage. Left arm comes up. And so there's the main action of that front leg, the external rotation. For some of us, if you really focus on that, it can feel like a little too much. And so maybe you play around with putting in just like a little hint of the opposite, a little hint of internal rotation. Maybe not even so much that it moves your leg, but just that you feel that internal shift. And then what if you add maybe a touch more external rotation to your back leg? Good. Then you can bend your right knee, walk that right arm forward. Take your block with you, maybe. And the left arm will lift up for half moon. Imagine both of your feet had something to push into. So as you push off the floor with that right leg, can you feel the same push through the left? And imagine that your left foot could meet resistance, could push into a wall. Can that help lengthen your spine at all? And some days it's just like, I'm just trying to stay here. So keep your gaze at one spot. See if you can steady your breathing. And then we'll take a big step back into a wide-legged stance. And again, bring your hands down. Walk them over to the left. And again, just some rotations with the hips. And it can be, I thought anyway, interesting to play around with. What if it's the movement of my pelvis that's creating the different rotation in the thighs? Letting the pelvis be the doer. And then what if it's really the thighs moving the pelvis? Does that feel different? And then back to stillness. Left hand under the nose, right arm up for the twist. First few breaths, just lengthen out your spine. Reestablish your connection to the ground for your legs and feet. And then bring that right arm, just like the back of the arm, to the bottom of your back ribs. And let a back bend start to come from that spot. And let it be the back bending that helps you twist a bit more. And even as you're back bending, even as you're twisting, can you imagine your spine slithering a little longer? And then release. Strong through your legs, hold your hips. With an inhale, come on up. Step to the front of the mat. Hands to the heart. Inhale, arms up. Exhale, fold down. Long spine, inhale. And then just bend your knees, sit down, exhale. Grab your block. In between your thighs. Hold the back of your thighs, just rock back onto your tailbone. Squeeze the block, lift your feet, lift your chest. And imagine you could curl your tailbone underneath you towards your heels. So your tailbone could almost bring your lower spine into a little bit of flexion, even as you lift your chest more, even as you maybe straighten your legs. Squeeze it onto that block, maybe you release the hands, still breathing. And then release. Feet together, knees wide. And bounce the knees a couple times. And we're going to keep your left leg in this externally rotated position. Extend your right leg straight out. And you can just lean back on your right hand. Bring your left hand onto your left thigh. Not pushing it down, but just give it a little bit of pressure. Maybe close your eyes. Letting the pressure of your hand drop down through the muscle, through the skin, right to your thigh bone. And then imagine you could traction it out a bit. Even as your left thigh falls away from your hand. Let that go. Inhale, take the left arm up. Exhale, reach forward and out over that leg. Hold anywhere on the leg. You can also use a strap here. We're going to press the right heel down. So you're waking up the back of that leg more. And then we're going to press the left thigh down, not with your hand. So you're pressing the left thigh down on its own, like the thigh could kind of swim you a little closer to your right leg. Follow your next exhale to the bottom of the breath, and then let your inhale roll you back up to a seat. We're going to change sides. Everybody knee good? Yeah, so if this knee hurts, you can always put something underneath it. You can also not bend it so much, bring the foot further down the leg. But we'll lean off onto the left hand and just use your right hand, really just to let your leg know that it's paying attention. So just a little pressure down. And then using like 99% imagination, traction that thigh bone out. What if you could sneak past any resistance being offered up by that right hip by being super gentle and encourage that right hip to relax away from you. And then we'll inhale, take the right arm up. And exhale, reaching out over that left leg, holding whatever you can hold. And the right knee's going to press down and back, that right thigh bone pressing down and back. How does it feel to breathe here? Follow your exhale to the bottom and let your inhale roll you up. And change sides again. This time, bend your left knee and bring the foot onto the ground to start. We're just going to wrap the right arm around that left knee for a little twist. And as you lift and open up your chest, turning to the left, can you feel your tailbone, just like in boat pose, kind of curling underneath you towards your right heel, towards your extended heel? So your lower back comes into a little bit of flexion as you twist. Maybe you take your arm outside the leg. Inhaling to come back to center. And then we're going to take the left foot and tuck it under. So you're in a half Virasana. How are we doing with knees like this? So you could elevate your hips on a blanket. I would say maybe a blanket over a block just for comfort wise. You can also just kind of roll your calf out to decongest the back of that knee. And then see what it feels like. So this is going to be a big internal rotation for this left thigh. And you're going to feel that, like imagine putting a little action into it. So that left groin and left inner thigh dive towards the floor. Now, if you feel like all you're going to do is tip over to the right, you can use a little bit of blanket. There's like a little shim under that outer right hip. And that can help. It's a little bit less work. It'll also help if you just think about internally rotating your thighs. That'll help. And then there's a couple of things you could do here. You can come forward and fold over your front leg. Or if you liked playing around with boat pose and the elements of that shape, you could strap up or hold your right foot and start to extend it up. In this shape, you're still really thinking about that internal rotation of your left thigh bone towards the floor. Chest is like Navasana, so you're lifting up towards this foot with a strap maybe. And then just like in boat pose, your tailbone is curling underneath you towards this heel, which should help lift you up a little higher. Like you're digging your roots down so you can have all that freedom in the upper body. And you're still breathing, right? Wherever you are. This is also a perfectly nice option here. Really thinking about melting those inner thighs towards the floor. And wherever you chose to go, you're still breathing, right? On purpose. Kranchasana is Heron pose. And then we'll release out of this. And we have one more side. Right, so we're going to bend the right knee, right foot on the floor to start. Wrap it up for a twist. Get fingertips down behind you. And you're getting that element of the lift of the chest, even as you feel your tailbone curling underneath you towards your heel. And then we'll unwind. And we'll tuck the foot under. If this is like not happening for you on this side, or in general, you can also do Janu Sirsasana again. Roll the calf out if that helps. Elevate your hips. Maybe a little bit of blanket underneath that right hip, underneath that left hip. And then the thing that I find helps stay up the most is the internal rotation of the thighs down. And you can stay right here. And fold forward into Triana Mukha. Or you can take it into that Kranchasana where you hold the foot. Feeling the pieces of Navasana that are hidden in this pose. Tailbone curling up, the lift of the chest. Adding in that internal rotation of the thighs. It's just a fun little balance too. So even if you're like, my leg's not going to straighten, you can still play with it. Just have your knee bent and you'll still feel what it's like to try to be upright by internally rotating that right thigh. When you've had enough of that, come on out. Make your way onto your back. Have all your cozy stuff within reach. Take the feet out as wide as the mat, turn the toes, and we'll just tick tock the knees. One last exploration of this big rotation in the joints of the hips. After all that internal rotation, you might like Baddha Konasana for a few moments before Shavasana. Feet together, knees wide. Baddha Konasana can also be a really nice place to start out Yoga Nidra if you haven't done much body scanning practices, because your feet are actually touching each other, so you can get a nice sense of how your feet feel, where they are in space. Or you can extend the legs out straight, up to you. Start to release the control of your breath. So we'll leave Ujjayi breath behind if you're still using it. And let your body's natural rhythm come back in. And then let your attention drop down into your feet. As if all you are is your feet, specifically your big toes. Feeling into your second toes. Third toes. Fourth toes. And pinkies. Feeling into the balls of your feet. Your arches. Your heels. Tops of feet. Ankles. Shins. Can you feel the inseams of your lower legs? Your calves and Achilles. Can you feel the outer seams of your lower legs? Feeling into your knees. Tops of thighs. Inner thighs and groins. Backs of thighs. Outer thighs and hips. Feel into your pelvis, your seat, lower belly, middle and upper belly, sacrum, lower back, middle back. Feel into your rib cage, right lung, left lung, heart. Thumbs, pointers, middle fingers, fourth fingers, and pinkies. Feel your palms, tops of hands, wrists. Feel your way up through your forearms to your elbows. Through your upper arms into your armpits and shoulders. Upper back, chest. Feel across your collarbones and up into the sides of your throat. Front of throat and back of neck. Base of skull. Feel through your chin, your lips, your gums, tongue, roof of mouth, lining of your cheeks. Feel nose and cheeks. Third eye. Eyes. Temples. Ears. Forehead. Scalp. Skull. Brain. And then let your attention rest some space back from the center of your forehead, behind your third eye. As if you were sitting right there for your meditation. As you let your body sink into the ground. Let your attention drop back down to your feet and bring a little wiggle into your toes. Maybe some gentle movement with your fingers. Maybe you roll your thigh bones inside your hip joints. And she'll wiggle your feet from side to side. And if you feel ready to move, Notice which nostril is more open. Roll over into a fetal position towards the more open side. Press up to a seat. Bring the hands into prayer with your thumbs at your heart, or you can stack the hands. Just taking a moment here to remember your intention or your dedication. And close out practice by chanting one Om. So much. Keep showing up. Thank you for helping me to fundraise for Second Chances this month. One of my favorite organizations, and you all know Andrea, so thank you so much. Hope you move with some ease now, maybe. Thank you guys. I'll be back next week. Have a good night.
Thank you so much.
So good to see you guys. Bye.
Thank you.